Welcome to Lukebook, Money and Wealth Building, explained for Singapore, not borrowed from somewhere else. In this episode, the first $100,000, the hardest, most important milestone in building wealth, and exactly how to reach it in Singapore. There is one number in your financial life that matters more than any other. It is not $1 million. It is 100,000. The first $100,000 is the hardest, slowest, most punishing stretch of the entire wealth-building journey, and also the most important. Get past it, and everything afterward becomes dramatically easier. Most people never do. In this episode, we are going to look at exactly why the first 100,000 is so brutally hard, how long it really takes in Singapore, where to build it, and the handful of things that separate the people who get there from the people who don't. This is the foundation everything else in this series rests on. If you want to understand this milestone, start with the man who made it famous. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's late business partner, one of the sharpest financial minds who ever lived, was once asked by a young person for the secret to getting started. His answer was blunt, unforgettable, and a little rude. He said, "The first $100,000 is a bitch, but you've got to do it." He didn't say the first million. He didn't say pick the right stock. He said, grind out that first 100K, however painful, because it is the gateway to everything else. He spent his early years living frugally and saving relentlessly to get there. And he was right. So let's understand why. Here's why it feels impossible. When you start from zero, there is no magic, no momentum, no compounding to speak of. Every dollar in your account is a dollar you personally earned and chose not to spend. The stock market isn't helping you yet, your balance is too small for it to matter. It is pure, grinding effort, month after month, with very little to show for it. This is the part nobody posts about online. It's slow, it's boring, and it can feel like you're getting nowhere. And that feeling, that this isn't working, is precisely why most people quit before they ever reach it. But the maths tells a different, more hopeful story. So let's look at that maths, because once you truly understand why the first 100,000 is hard, you understand the entire game. And the reason is beautiful in its simplicity. In the beginning, you are the engine, not your investments. Picture an account with $20,000 in it. A strong 8% year in the market adds $1,600. Sounds fine. But if you're saving $1,000 a month, you're adding $12,000 a year with your own hands. In other words, at this stage, you are doing roughly 7 times more work than the market is. Your discipline, your savings rate, your refusal to spend, that is what's actually building your wealth. The market is barely a passenger. This is liberating. Once you grasp it, early on, your success depends almost entirely on things you fully control. Now watch what changes as the pile grows, because this is the whole secret. That same 8% return earns you $800 on a $10,000 balance. But on a $100,000 balance, 8% earns you $8,000, 10 times as much, for doing absolutely nothing different. Same percentage, same effort, 10 times the reward, purely because the base is bigger. This is why the size of your pile matters so much. A small return on a large base beats a large return on a small base, every single time. The entire purpose of the painful first 100,000 is to build a base big enough that returns finally start to mean something. And that is the magic of 100,000. It is the point where your returns finally begin to rival what you can save. At $100,000, an ordinary 8% year quietly generates around $8,000, getting close to a full year of hard saving, appearing in your account as if from nowhere. The engine, which had been cold and silent, finally splutters to life. Now, to be completely honest with you, the true tipping point, where your returns actually exceed your savings, comes a bit later, somewhere past 200,000 for most people. But 100,000 is where you first feel it. It's where money starts, at last, to work as hard as you do. Which leads to a claim that sounds wrong, but isn't. In many ways, the first 100,000 is harder than the next 900,000. From 0 to 100,000, you carry almost the entire weight yourself. From 100,000 to 1,000,000, compounding increasingly carries you. The first leg is a steep climb on foot. The rest is a climb with the wind finally at your back. So if the first 100,000 feels disproportionately hard, that's because it genuinely is. It is the price of admission to the part where wealth building starts to feel almost effortless. Pay it once, and you never pay it again. So how long does this actually take, in Singapore, with real numbers? Let's put the romance aside and run the timelines, because they reveal the single most important truth about this stage of the journey. Here is that truth, stated plainly. To go from 0 to $100,000 in about 5 years, you need to put away roughly $1,500 a month. And of that final 100,000, around 86,000 will be money you saved, and only about 14,000 will be investment returns. Read that again. At this stage, 86% of your wealth comes from your own savings, and barely 14% from the market. The first 100,000 is not invested into existence. It is saved into existence. Which means the lever you should be pulling with all your strength is not your rate of return. It's your savings rate. Let me prove just how little your return matters at this stage. It's genuinely surprising. Suppose you want $100,000 in 5 years. If your money earns a feeble 1%, you need to save about $19,600 a year. And if you were a world-beating investor earning 12%, you'd still need to save about $15,700 a year. Think about that. 12 times the investment return saves you less than $4,000 a year in required savings. The brilliant investor and the cautious saver end up in almost exactly the same place. So please, don't spend the first 100,000 obsessing over squeezing out an extra few percent. It barely moves the needle. Saving more does. So the real timeline comes down to one thing: how much you can put away each month. Let's keep it realistic, parking your savings somewhere safe, earning around 2% while you build. Save $1,000 a month, and you cross 100,000 in just under 8 years. $1,500 a month gets you there in about 5.5. $2,000 a month, 4 years. $2,500, a little over 3. And $3,000 a month brings it inside 3 years. There's no trick here, no shortcut. The entire timeline is set by the gap between what you earn and what you spend, exactly the gap we built in our last episode. And just to hammer the point home, should you be invested in stocks while building this first base, or just save cash? Let's compare. Saving $1,500 a month in a safe account at 2%, you reach 100,000 in about 5.3 years. Brave it in the stock market at 5%, and you shave it to 4.9 years. A red hot 8%? 4.6 years. The difference between playing it safe and swinging for the fences is about 8 months, over a 5-year journey. That is the whole point. At this stage, the choice of where to invest barely matters. Which means there is no reason on earth to gamble your hard-won first 100,000 chasing returns. Build it safely, simply, boringly. Now, there's a uniquely Singaporean twist to all of this, one that means your first 100,000 might already be growing, quietly, without you even noticing. It's called CPF. Here's something most young Singaporeans overlook. While you're grinding away trying to save your first 100,000 in cash, a second pile is being built for you automatically, in your CPF. Every month, a slice of your salary, topped up by your employer, flows into your CPF accounts, earning guaranteed interest of 2.5 to 5%. It's forced savings, whether you like it or not. And for a great many Singaporeans, the truth is this: you will cross your first $100,000 inside CPF long before you ever see it in your bank account. The question is, does that count? Let's look at the real numbers, straight from the CPF board. These are the average total CPF balances by age, at the end of 2024. By the age of 25, the average member has around $13,000. By 30, about $59,000. And somewhere in the early 30s, between 30 and 35, the average Singaporean CPF balance quietly crosses $100,000, reaching around $114,000. By the late 30s, it's over $160,000. So in a very real sense, the average Singaporean reaches their first 100,000 inside CPF in their early 30s, often without trying. It is a genuine head start the rest of the world doesn't have. But does CPF count? The honest answer is yes and no. Yes, it is unquestionably real wealth, guaranteed by the government, compounding safely on your behalf. It absolutely belongs on your net worth statement. But no, you cannot touch most of it until you're 55, and a big chunk will go toward your home. So when people talk about the first 100,000 as a milestone, they usually mean liquid, investable money, cash and investments you actually control today. Both piles matter. CPF is your locked, guaranteed foundation. Your cash and investments 100,000 is your free, flexible engine. The smart move is to build the second while quietly appreciating the first. And here's a clever way to think about CPF that professional investors use. Because your CPF earns a guaranteed 2.5 to 5%, risk-free, government-backed, it acts like the safe, bond portion of your overall portfolio. The special account, earning up to 5%, is effectively a rock-solid bond you already own. That's powerful, because it means your CPF is doing the safe, steady job for you, which frees the money you're actively saving and investing to be braver, aimed at long-term growth. You don't need to hold lots of cautious bonds yourself, CPF is already playing that role. Understanding this turns CPF from an annoying deduction into a quiet cornerstone of your wealth. So you're saving hard, and CPF is building in the background. The next question is intensely practical: where exactly should you put your growing cash pile while you build it toward 100,000? Your first stop is a high-yield savings account, and here, Singapore offers some eye-catching numbers, with a catch. As of mid-2026, banks advertise headline rates like 5.85% at Standard Chartered, 4.6% at Bank of China, 4.45% at OCBC, 4.1% at DBS, all on roughly your first $100,000. Tempting. But read the fine print, because those headline rates demand you jump through hoops, credit your salary, spend a certain amount, buy insurance, invest through them. Miss the conditions, and the realistic rate most people actually earn is far lower, somewhere around 1.8 to 2.2%. Still vastly better than the near zero a normal account pays. Just don't believe the billboard number. As your pile grows past what you need for emergencies, you can ladder it into safe instruments that earn a little more, all of which we've met before. Singapore Treasury bills and savings bonds, backed by the government, recently paid in the region of 1.5 to just over 2%. Fixed deposits, similar. And money market funds, easy to access, very low risk, have recently paid around 2.5 to 3%. The principle is simple: keep 3 to 6 months of expenses instantly accessible in your high-yield account, then park the rest of your growing 100,000 fund in these safe, slightly higher yielding options. You're not trying to get rich on this money. You're keeping it safe, liquid, and quietly working. Before we go any further, one rule that comes before all the others: build your emergency fund first. Before you invest a single dollar in the stock market, set aside 3 to 6 months of living expenses in your high-yield savings account, untouchable, instantly accessible, deliberately boring. Why? Because life happens. A job loss. A medical bill. A family emergency. Without a cushion, a single bad month can force you to sell your investments at the worst possible moment, or worse, push you into debt. With it, you can write out almost anything and never disturb your growing pile. The emergency fund isn't really part of your 100,000, it's the foundation that protects it. Build it first. Then build everything else on top. And there's one accelerator that does double duty: the CPF top-up we covered last episode. By voluntarily topping up your own CPF, you can claim tax relief on up to $8,000 a year, and another $8,000 for topping up family. You're simultaneously growing your guaranteed CPF pile faster and cutting your tax bill, and that tax you save is more cash you can funnel toward your liquid 100,000. The same goes for the SRS scheme, with its $15,300 allowance. These aren't just retirement tools. Used early, they quietly speed up your entire wealth foundation. Free money from the taxman, redirected straight into building your base. So we know why it's hard, how long it takes, and where to put it. Now the heart of the matter: how you actually generate the money. It comes down to two engines, and they are not equally important. Engine number one is saving, and at this stage, it is roughly 85% of the entire job. We covered this in depth last episode, so here's the essence. Pay yourself first. The moment your salary lands, a fixed chunk goes straight to savings. Before you spend a cent win the big rocks, don't buy the car you can't afford, don't stretch for the condo, because those two decisions dwarf everything else. And resist lifestyle inflation as your income climbs. The people who reach 100,000 fastest aren't the highest earners. They're the ones with the widest gap between earning and spending. Saving isn't the boring prelude to investing. For the first 100,000, saving is the main event. Let's make it concrete on a real Singapore salary. The median full-time worker takes home roughly $5,000 a month. Save 20% of that, $1,000, and your first 100,000 is nearly 8 years away. Push to 30%, $1,500 a month, and it's 5.5 years. 40%, $2,000 a month, and you're there in 4 years. 50%, a serious but achievable rate for a focused single person or a dual-income couple, and you cross the line in just over 3 years. The difference between a casual saver and a committed one isn't a little. It's cutting the journey in half, or more. And of course, the gap has a second side: earning more. As we explored last episode, there's a ceiling on how little you can spend, but no ceiling on what you can earn. A side income, a job switch, a raise you actually invest instead of spend, any of these can pour fuel directly onto your savings, provided you don't let your lifestyle swell to swallow it. The most powerful combination of all is the simplest: earn a bit more, keep your spending flat, and send every extra dollar straight to your growing pile. Do that, and the first 100,000 arrives faster than any investment trick could ever deliver. But knowing you should save more is useless if you rely on willpower to do it, because willpower fails, especially in the boring middle. The single most powerful trick the consistent savers use is to remove themselves from the decision entirely. They automate. Set up a standing instruction so that, the day after your salary lands, A fixed amount is automatically swept into a separate savings or investment account you simply don't touch. You never see the money, so you never feel like you're sacrificing it. The saving happens whether you're motivated that month or not. This is the real secret hiding behind every story of patient wealth building. It isn't built by motivation, which comes and goes. It's built by systems, quiet, automatic, running in the background, every single month, for years. Engine number 2 is investing, the smaller, simpler engine, worth about 15% of the job. And the golden rule here is, keep it boring. Once you've got a base built and an emergency fund set aside, you can start putting money into the market, not into hot stocks or clever bets, but into a single, low-cost fund that owns the entire world's stock market. For Singaporeans, the standard, sensible choices are Ireland-domiciled global ETFs, tickers like IWDA and VWRA, for tax reasons we covered in episode 1. Buy a little, automatically, every month, no matter what the market is doing. That's it. The first 100,000 does not require investing genius. It requires investing discipline. And here is the warning that goes with it, the one that destroys more first 100,000s than anything else. Do not gamble it. When you're young and impatient, watching others seemingly get rich overnight, the temptation is enormous, the hot crypto coin, the meme stock, the friends can lose scheme. But remember what we just proved, at this stage, chasing a higher return barely shortens your timeline, while a single bad bet can wipe out years of grinding saving in a week. The first 100,000 is built on certainty, not luck. There will be a time and place for taking measured risks, but it is not with the precious, hard-won base that everything else depends on. Protect it like your life depends on it. We've covered the maths, the timelines, the accounts, the engines. But none of it matters if you can't do the one thing that actually separates those who reach 100,000 from those who never do. And that battle is fought entirely in your head. Let's start with a sobering reality check. In 2024, around 60% of working Singaporeans reported living paycheck to paycheck, noticeably higher than the regional average of 48%. 60%. In one of the wealthiest cities on earth, the majority of workers have little left at the end of the month. Now, some of that is the genuine bite of the cost of living, and we'll be fair about that. But a large part is a gap between what people earn and the lifestyle they choose to fund. The reason the first 100,000 is rare isn't that it's mathematically impossible for most. It's that it's psychologically hard. And that's actually good news, because psychology is something you can change. The first enemy is what I call the boring middle. The start is exciting, you open the account, you feel the momentum of a new goal. The end is exciting, you can see 100,000 on the horizon. But the long, grey middle, where you're at 30 or 40,000 and the finish line feels impossibly far, is where dreams quietly die. There's no dopamine in the middle. No applause. Just the same boring transfer, month after month. The people who make it are the ones who learn to find a strange satisfaction in the boredom, who treat consistency itself as the win. Fall in love with the boring transfer, and you've already won. And here's a simple trick to survive that boring middle: measure it. Once a month, write down your total, your savings, your investments, your one growing number, and watch it climb. It sounds almost too trivial to matter, but it's quietly powerful. That rising number becomes your scoreboard, your source of momentum on the months when motivation runs dry. When it jumps, you feel the progress in your bones. When it stalls, you feel the pull to do better next month. What gets measured gets managed, and what gets watched, gets grown. The people who reach 100,000 are almost always the people who knew, at any given moment, roughly how close they were. Because tracking turns an abstract, distant goal into a real, visible game you can watch yourself winning. The second enemy is the get-rich-quick fantasy. It is the great destroyer of first 100,000s. Because the honest path is slow, the impatient mind goes looking for a shortcut, the trade that 10xs, the coin that moons, the scheme a friend swears by. And here's the cruel irony, the very people who most need to build a steady base are the ones most tempted to gamble it away chasing a fast one. Almost no one gets rich quick. Almost everyone who tries gets poor quick. Wealth, for ordinary people, is built slowly and boringly, or it isn't built at all. The lottery ticket mindset is the single biggest reason people stay broke their whole lives. The third enemy often arrives wearing a suit and a smile, the expensive investment-linked policy, sold as a clever way to ensure and invest at once. We dismantled these last episode, but they deserve repeating here, because they quietly devour early savings. Investment-linked policies commonly carry total fees of around 3 to 4% a year, a brutal drag when your pile is small and every dollar counts. Worse, the early years premiums often vanish into commissions, so your money barely grows at first. If you want to protect your family, buy cheap, pure term insurance, and invest the difference yourself in that boring low-cost fund. Don't let a polished sales pitch skim years off your journey to 100,000. Two quieter enemies round out the list. The first is waiting for a windfall, telling yourself you'll start saving seriously once you get the big bonus, the inheritance, the pay jump. But the windfall, if it ever comes, gets spent by the same habits you have today. The time to start is now, with whatever you have, however small. The second is lifestyle creep, the slow, invisible swelling of your spending to match every raise, so that no matter how much you earn, there's never anything left to save. Both enemies share one cure: automate your saving, so the money is gone before you can spend it, and so the habit doesn't depend on your willpower in a weak moment. And let me be honest about one real, uniquely local pressure: the sandwich generation. Many Singaporeans are saving for their own future while also supporting aging parents and raising children, all at once. If that's you, the first 100,000 will take longer, and that is not a failure, it's reality, and it's honorable. The principles don't change, the timeline simply stretches. Save what you genuinely can, even if it's less than the textbook says. Protect the habit, however small the amount. $100 a month, saved faithfully through hard years, keeps the engine alive until your circumstances ease. The goal was never to compare your pace to anyone else's. It's only to keep moving forward. So let's say you do it. You grind through the boring middle, you dodge the gambles and the sales pitches, and one ordinary day, your account ticks over 6 figures. What actually happens next? The answer is the best part of this entire story. What happens next is that it gets easier. Much easier. Remember the maths: at 100,000, the market finally starts pulling real weight alongside you. Your money is now generating thousands of dollars a year on its own. So the second 100,000 arrives noticeably faster than the first, with the same monthly saving, because now you have a partner doing part of the lifting. And the third arrives faster still. This is the snowball Munger was pointing at. The hardest part is getting the snowball packed and rolling. Once it's moving, it gathers its own momentum, and your job shifts from heaving it uphill to simply not stopping it. And from that first 100,000, the path to $1 million opens up, exactly the journey we mapped in episode 1. Take your hard 100,000, keep adding 2,000 a month, and let it compound at a steady 5%. Watch what happens. The curve that crawled for years now begins to bend upward, then steeply, as compounding takes the wheel. In about 2 decades, that 100,000 base has grown past $1 million, most of it growth you never earned at a job. The first 100,000 was the down payment. The million is what it buys you. Every painful month of that early grind was you laying the foundation for this. But here's the deepest reward, and it isn't financial. The discipline compounds too. The person who grinds out their first 100,000 is changed by it. You learn that you can delay gratification. You learn that consistency beats intensity. You learn to ignore the noise, to distrust the shortcut, to find peace in the slow and steady. Those habits, forged in the hardest, most unglamorous stretch of the journey, are exactly the habits that carry you to the second 100,000, the first million, and beyond. The money is only half the price. The other half is who you become while earning it. That version of you is worth far more than $100,000. So here is the whole of it. The first 100,000 is the hardest money you will ever make, not because the maths is complicated, but because it demands years of quiet, boring, unrewarded discipline, mostly from your own saving, with the market barely helping. Park it safely, keep it simple, never gamble it, and protect the habit through the hard seasons. Do that, and one day the engine turns on, the snowball starts to roll, and everything you've learned in this series finally clicks into place. The first 100,000 is a rite of passage. It is also the single best financial thing you will ever do for yourself. So don't wait for the perfect moment. Start with the next dollar. I'm glad you spent this time with me. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. If this made building wealth in Singapore a little clearer, give it a like, and subscribe to Lukebook so you don't miss the next episode. See you in the next one.